for hiccups. So the reason we're doing this workshop is actually you guys guinea pigs for the next week. We're going to run a workshop in OpenStack Summit. So it's going to be like 150 people, and I think it's good that I tried it here first, and it seems to be we have problems that we need to fix for the next week. And let me show that. So this is the agenda for workshop. We first just make sure that everything is working. Try the kubectl, that you can spin some containers. Check that you can actually expose some services, and actually we need to ask you to deploy dashboard, the Kubernetes add-on. So after that, if everything is good, we're gonna switch to the Helm. So Helm is a packaging mechanism for Kubernetes. It's instead of you writing a YAML files, everything is prepackaged in advance, and you can change the values. You can customize your application without actually going inside of the YAML file. So I have my ex-colleague from Ericsson, Per Anderson. He is going to talk. Per Pedersen, sorry, Per Pedersen. Yeah, he's going to talk about Helm, the theory part, and then we're going to do some more workshop. We're going to actually deploy some Helm application, and we're going to talk about monocular project that is actually Helm catalog. And then we're going to do Helm OpenStack. So we're going to deploy OpenStack on top of Kubernetes. Is that cool? All right. So So I will quickly start here demo kind of and doing some. So the first part, we're just going to deploy some application that we actually presented last year for Kubernetes birthday party. Okay, nice. Doesn't work. It was working before. Okay, this is. Yeah, it's okay. It's. Okay, so just to check that everything is good, we're going to get pods. Nothing works. Okay. Nassim, can you bring another VM, please? Or actually, Okay, so we up and running. Okay, so you already did it. How far you want, Nassim, with this? Okay, cool. So when you do kubectl describe service that you deployed, you can get actually the port number, and then the IP of your VM that you actually SSH. This is, you can specify in the browser. And this is the first application that we deployed. So I'm just doing it just that you can check that Kubernetes is up and running, and maybe there are some new people who never actually used kubectl in this workshop. Do we have those? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so for you the workshop is good. So what you have here is you have Kubernetes 1.6, and if you do kubectl get nodes, you will see that you actually have one node here. So what we did here, we couldn't give you Minikube because we cannot run Minikube in the cloud. So this is Kube8m that runs in Docker containers. So it's like usually Kube8m, as you know, you need to deploy several nodes, but this one, because it's running in a Docker container, you have like one node kind of cluster. And it has some nice features. So we deployed persistent storage with NFS provisioner. So if you do kubectl get storage classes, you will see that we have NFS storage class provision. So, and what I basically did here, because we don't using the Kubernetes cluster in the cloud, we cannot use load balancer. There's two options you have, or three actually. First one is called service. You expose service as a cluster IP, which is not this case. And then we have you exposing your services as a node port. So that's what we have here. So everything you're going to be doing, you're going to be exposing as a node port. And the third one, which is sometimes used, is called ingress. This is not deployed here, but you can also use ingress to expose your services. So this is just the commands you can actually scale your container. So right now we have one up running, and we can actually scale to 6. And you can see that the application is scaling. And then you can also do the rolling upgrades if you can have the time. So one thing we ask you to deploy Kubernetes dashboard. So Kubernetes dashboard, it's an add-on for Kubernetes. You can actually find this template how to create dashboard in the Kubernetes add-ons folder if you go on the website kubernetes.io. But I just prepared here. You can actually fetch this file, and what it looks like is inside. I can show you quickly. So we have deployment. This is actually something would deploy your container, and in the deployment type you can specify how many replicas you want to have, some annotations, images. So this we're going to be deploying Kubernetes dashboard image version 1.6. And then what is the port of container is 1990. There's also liveness probes that actually checks if the container is alive. If it's not, it's gonna restart container. And the second part of the YAML file, manifest file, we have service. So services will allow to expose your application to outside. And as we see, we have type here node port, and we're exposing to the port 80. So that's why let's say let's deploy this application. So you can just because we have everything in one file here, we just run kubectl create and then specify the dashboard manifest file. And then what we can do, we can actually verify So we see there is a okay. Oh yeah. To find the service for the dashboard here, you would do kubectl get service, and you need to specify namespace kube system. So kube system namespace is used only for like the containers that are required for your cluster and your add-ons. So you're not going to see it with without specifying a namespace usually. And when you're going to have RBAC in the future, you will not be able to see it because they will going to completely cut it. So when we do kubectl describe to the dashboard service, we can see that this is the node port number 3492. So what we can do here, we're using the same IP address of the VM. We actually deployed the dashboard. So just try to get to this point, and then let me know. We will go ahead with the second workshop, and I'm gonna share the file with you right now. But basically, we will need the dashboard for the next exercises, basically. Okay. So the second workshop is about Helm. So when I did, when we did look into the inside of the dashboard file, did you notice that there's a lot of parameters here, right? And what happens, let's say if you want to deploy this manifest file into the Amazon, you will use, for example, load balancer, and you need to change node port to load balancer. You may also change some ports, annotations, image numbers. So you don't want to go every time and change it like manually. So this is where the Helm charts actually, Helm projects coming, where they package the application and allow you to change the values when you're deploying on the fly, and because they're exposing through the variable. So this workshop, before I was starting, I'm going to ask Per to talk about Helm a little bit. Is that okay? And the rest, guys, try to finish the dashboard deployment and get ready for the second part. Maybe I should have just made you my laptop.
But I don't think I mean.
Is it working? Well, I can put it in my laptop. So it doesn't.
No, it has them today.
Okay. Let me bring it up.
Yeah, so while we're waiting to get it up, I'm Per Pettersson and work for Ericsson, so I know some of you here. Who have any experience with Helm as a package manager? Uh, we are going through that and exploring a bit of the benefit, in particular why we have started using Helm, and the presentation will highlight some of them. So if we start with the first slide, when we initially start with container, we are basically going very much towards Docker as the first, and are very central around one container and push to a repository. Then when we evolve that to talk about microservices, our application and are becoming more decoupled, and we divide it up to more containers, which means that we create a dependency between those containers. And then with Kubernetes, to be able to deploy that in a production environment, we need to add deployment descriptors and metadata to configure and to set up the applications. So that's what we want, to have increased flexibility. But at the same time, we have a burden of having to configure more data. Then also, if you have a continuous integration pipeline, what we want to have is a way to basically have the same thing in test as in production. So we want to avoid having any specific hard-coded data in any deployment manifest. And then also, if you're using any dependencies, we want to be able to integrate them easily, because all of a sudden when we start using Kubernetes, we are not only dealing with one container from GitHub or from Docker Hub or any register. We are ending up having to maintain deployment manifests for third parties. So one thing we don't want to have is what I indicated at the right, that we have something somewhere in the manifest where it's picking an image which says latest. Because if you have that as a dependency, most likely the day before you do a demo for any important customer, that latest will have been updated, and your application will not work. So one typical example we had, or my experience of this, complexity, first bundle multiple containers into one. That was deploying storage and Ceph on a Kubernetes cluster. Because in Ceph you have different kind of containers, so there's monitors, object store, you have gateway and metadata service also. So you have 5-6 containers you can have bundled, and then with the metadata. This means it's getting complex to handle. So next slide. Then Helm has evolved and become, if you see or look into that on GitHub over the last year, we can, if we keep looking into that, the deployment description and all the deployment artifacts are being very much cleaned up, and they are very good. So what Helm does, it supports bundle multiple container into one deployment, so you don't need to deploy them one by one. Even it improves the continuous integration and deployment workflow very much. And one thing that is very interesting is the templating in engine. That is basically using very, very cool stuff that Go has in the engine that's built in Go. This is the same thing that for web design the product Hugo has become popular to generate static websites. So then with this we don't need to have any hard-coded manifests, and then we also have the feature of upgrade and rollback of services. Then if you look into the structure of Helm, it's essentially three-part. The first thing is what is called a chart, which is the definition of an application. So in the chart we have metadata, we have templates, we have resource definition, and we have variable extracted out. Then we have a client CLI, which is a Helm client, as a command line tool, and a service side tiller that's deployed in Kubernetes. Tiller is the component that have the templating engine and will extract the data from the deployment descriptors. So then the concept basically, the charge is inside the charge we have a group of Kubernetes resources that we can deploy, and we have the client tool in Helm CLI, and then the tiller is the component within the cluster that handles releases. Okay, next. And I hope you can see this. There is example of how we can describe data and how we can write template in Go and the deployment descriptor. The first one is a way where we describing that we include text from a file, in this case Ceph, from a keyring, and then with the pipe symbol that we can feed into a base 64 encoder, essentially, to encode the text, and then also apply formatting. So in this case we indented by 4 spaces. The second example is that instead of hard coding an absolute path, we are taking out a storage directory from a variable file, and then the same thing that we can set on values for threshold for CPUs, not in numbers but in references. Then also we can give a default value but then take out from variable. And lastly, one way to define conditional statement in the templating language. So in this case, if you have a defined one radius gateway, then we will include certain deployment, additional deployment. So that's a very nice way to describe deployment in a clean way without having any dependency. And the purpose for this is that your deploy, the manifest, the artifact, that you can have a clean way to describe them, so you can use the same main deployment file both in test, promotion, and production. And the only thing that you change the variable value that we will see later. So then, if we see the structure of a chart, what we can include, the first line include a dependency. So with this packaging format, we can indicate if we are dependent on any additional packaging like database or additional components. And then the chart YAML include the actually artifact what we are deploying. We always include a README file describing how to deal with the chart and what to include. And we have requirements and templates, which actually the Kubernetes deployment files. And lastly, we have one file with values that are the input for the template and template engine.
Yeah, when you're gonna do the workshop, you'll actually, if you explore a little bit, you're probably gonna make more sense. But basically, all of those Go code that Per was showing is like inside of the YAML manifest, and you kind of describe it. And then in the values.yaml, you can actually put everything in one place. Like you have like 100 charts, but you have one value file with all the parameters that you want to change. And in the requirements file, what you can do, for example, if you're deploying, let's say, some application, but it requires many other dependencies. So, for example, you want to deploy OpenStack, but before you need to deploy Rabbit, you need to deploy MySQL. You can all put there. So what it will do, it will first deploy the requirements, and then it deploy the main application that you want to deploy. So otherwise, if you do with the manifest files, you have to figure out what is the dependency, how to do this. And if you have like 2 applications to run, this is fine. But if you have like 50 applications or hundreds of applications, you're probably going to lose the track what to change. Yeah.
No, and to comment on that, this is also very good too. As a vehicle, then you can have Ansible to automate that procedure so even further. So to install or configure now, what we're doing here when we configure Helm, that we say that we want to install an application or a Helm which is called MyApp, and we want to set the template service port to be 8080. So instead of hard coded that in a manifest, or then that will be picked up from during the deployment phase. We can give that a value, and then we can also have the values taken from a file, which is a key value.
Yeah, for example, the good example, you can have default values that you're deploying in staging, but in production you want to deploy the same thing but with another variables. So you actually can create another variable file which will override the previous one, and you can have control. Same charts can be used on many different environments, and you can control with this additional variable file.
And then if you have them in a file, of course, do you have them on the source control very easily. So then we can also see from a chart. So if you get a third-party chart, we see the dependencies. So we can update dependency, list the dependency, and then build the dependencies as well.
So yeah, there was like more you can use. There's like OpenStack community, Kubernetes community have this project Helm, right? And they actually maintain huge number of those charts, and you can deploy ElkStack, Grafana, many things there. You can go, and there's like incubator, which are not like recommended yet, but there's a stable release that you can actually deploy and pretty much up in production. And But sometimes you want to deploy your own application, and in this case, you can actually do the creating chart, which is
yeah. So to create a chart, the skeleton for that is basically very simple. You do Helm create and then your application.
Yeah.
And that will create this structure that you have a chart and with dependency chart YAML file that you indicate the versioning, README requirements, etc., and then a template directory where you put your deployment artifacts. So you, in a normal case, that when you deploy something, the largest part you deploy it's a Kubernetes deployment. So you have a YAML file which is a deployment. Here you can gather multiple deployment and multiple services in the same bundle on this template directory. And then lastly, a file with the variable. That is the key value that you add in. So a chart, basically the metadata for your application bundle, has a version, description, it has a name, and then you can add also additional tags that make them searchable on open source.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Per. I mean, this Per actually was working developing actually one of the Ceph charts. So he has like real hands-on experience. So if you have any questions before we going forward, you can ask right now. I'm switching to the workshops. Any questions on the help chart?
I saw a log file. What is it used for? Is it the same as if a session already exists, or it's not related?
No, you have when you actually in the demo here or in your
Here in the charts when you were showing the
yeah.
charts, there was a log file.
Log?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is if you already run, you have some previous state.
Are Helm and charts, are they the official universal way to deploy software in Kubernetes, or is it one among many others?
So I think in Kubernetes we have like different special interest groups, and one of them called SIG apps. So they're responsible like to find the best way how to deploy applications. And right now, like in the beginning, what happened? Helm was the company called Days. They had a like hackathon like we have and like get drunk, and then they decided, okay, let's do like this way, and they call it Helm. And then charts. This is like also nautical, like a map of things. And then they actually went to the KubeCon, I think, and they met the Google guys, and they were doing similar thing, and then they merged together all effort, and then this is the project Helm that it happened. But they said if somebody can figure out something better, by all means. This is not like locking you in, but this is something Kubernetes community is supporting, and they're creating catalog now. They're creating they're maintaining every version. Like every time there's new Kubernetes version, they bump the let's say if you had alpha feature in the YAML file, they'll all update it. So if there is a better way of doing it, by all means. This is just like working with your YAML file. I mean, I found this very similar if you worked with, let's say, Terraform. Like same idea. Like there's nothing special in it, and like within an hour you can actually figure out what's happening and start building your charts. But I think when we were working on the OpenStack Helm charts, there was so many feedback. Like there's so many things I'm missing, and that's where actually the community help means that you can actually go and contribute or propose like this is something I don't expect. This is how it's supposed to working. Let's improve this for them.
No, and I think also since it's one of the main Helm archive used to be driven by AT&T ComDev on GitHub, but now since it moved to under OpenStack, you have more focus and more alignment to gather around Helm from the OpenStack community as well as Kubernetes itself. And
okay, so I think it's better to show what see it, or if you run the demo, it's going to be better. So first thing before actually you start working with Helm, you need to install Helm, and this is like Helm init command, and it will deploy the tiller. And if you want to check, you do kubectl get system deploy tiller deploy. If you see it is deployed, that means your Helm command line start working. So you can do Helm list. This shows how many chart you installed. You can do Helm repo to see repo list to see what repositories you have. So right now we have stable repository. This is like officially supported by Kubernetes, and this is our local repository that we created. So now we do Helm search. This will show all the supported Kubernetes charts that are unstable. So you can actually, if you go to the GitHub, to the master stable, you can find all of those charts here, and you can actually read how to deploy them and what is the values, parameters you can change. So it's very well documented, and maintained as well. And this is something we call incubator. This is a chart that actually not yet supported because of some specific limitation. Mostly it's related to stateful sets. Okay, and then so let's deploy one Helm chart and just show the power of the Helm. So for example, we want to deploy Helm chart for Minio. Anybody use Minio before? So Minio is like a cloud native object storage, S3. Yeah. So you basically can have a place to store all your objects on the Kubernetes without actually inventing the wheel. And if you can see in the description, you can just deploy out of the box. But as I said, if you're deploying in a cloud, you might need to have load balancer, or you might you might have let's say persistent storage. Sometimes you don't have it, and you can actually define different resources for your application. So all of those parameters you can actually, without going inside of the manifest file, you can specify and start. So for us, what we're interested, we want to change service for the node type. What is it? Yeah, what is it? A load balancer. Yeah, so service type, we want to change from load balancer to node port, as we discussed, because we're running it in the Minikube, in the KubeADM. And we also want to change the storage class. And also we want to change, we want to set what is the user and password. So same thing when you would deploy MySQL, you would be able to set a root password for your MySQL database. And basically the command is very simple. You have Helm install, name of your application, and then you can set all your variables here, or you can actually create a file, separate file that will contain all of those things. So. Huh? Yeah, so you can just go inside of the charts, and you can actually go to the values.yaml, and here they have all the parameters listed here. And sometimes if you see something is missing there, you can go to the YAML file, to the temp, like to those, let's say, the service file, right? And you see something is not been translated into this Golang that Per was explaining. For example, you want to change this port, you would just create the same value, and you call the what is this value, and then you can actually expose it to the value file. So let's see if so when you run the command, what is good, remember there was in the structure as well, you can actually specify something called what is it, README or the nodes. So those nodes actually displayed after you deploy it. So even if you didn't know what to do, it will give you like at least an idea. Yeah, so this chart is not very good because it doesn't have nodes. But if you go to the MySQL chart, it will tell you, if you want to log into the database, you do like kubectl SSH, or like it will provide you the steps. So without even like knowing what this application does, it provides you the way to connect to it. But this is not the best example, I guess. But here you can see what you actually run. So we run services, we run deployment, and we created secret, config map, and persistent volume. So what we do actually, we want to just check if the application get deployed. So we again do kubectl get service, and then describe service minio. So we can see the node port here is 3584, and we can easily log into this. So you see this application already deployed, and in the command we provide during the deployment we provided what is the user password here. So the secret key is my secret, and then my access. So this is, and you can actually create your buckets and load your objects inside it, like as you would work with any object storage. So I'm going to switch to the right away to the workshop 3. This is like actually deploying the OpenStack, and it takes a little bit time to deploy, of course. So I want to share it right away and then talk about the OpenStack Helm project. Any questions on Helm, or you guys trying to follow as well?
I have a question. The charts, do they have, like I noticed in the Helm search that there's all the OpenStack components, the core ones. Do they know like how to work with each other? Are there like relations concepts and with the charts? Or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're talking about OpenStack or in general?
OpenStack,
Okay.
or something else, but in this example, OpenStack.
Yeah. Just I'm gonna share it with the guys. So I want everybody to start running the command because it might take a little bit time. Okay. So if you can do the steps, these first 3 steps, and then we can continue, because this actually command will remove the stable repository, so we cannot just not to mess up with the. So we're just going to be working with our internal repository that we prepared here, which has OpenStack components, and we can actually. Going back to your questions, you can actually launch all of those commands in one shot. So the first part, we're going to deploy MariaDB, Memcache, etcd, and RabbitMQ, like infrastructure for OpenStack. But we can actually also run at the same time all the rest. So just to save, okay. That was the. Problem. Yeah, no, I think it didn't specify the.
Well, you remove the stable repo, and now I guess.
No, because those are supposed to be going from internal one. Okay, I think I need to. I'll do make. Okay. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. Can you give me the IP? Man, you're saving my day today. It's good that we're bringing it to Boston. Okay. So I will just get back to you in a second. I will. You did step one? Okay. So if we see Helm list, what is going on here? We see that we already kind of click the install button, but in reality, if you can look inside, there's still like work is ongoing. So MariaDB already been deployed. RabbitMQ it's still initializing, and I'm just gonna kick the rest as well. So this is OpenStack part. Okay. RabbitMQ. I guess this is duplication. Did you run already? Or because it says it's already installed Keystone. Okay. No, because before it didn't install. Oh, there's a Keystone. Let's check if we have glance. Open. Okay, I know the problem. I need to be here because what it's looking for, it's looking for the tarballs that we already placed here. So without the tarballs, it will not gonna deploy. Okay, so. Okay, so I kick the deployment. I might be running a battery now. Okay, so answering your question in terms of dependencies, how things are working here, right? So he's already left, right? Okay, yeah. So so the OpenStack Helm project is something recently pop up in the radar. So as you know, if you're from OpenStack community, we tried to containerize OpenStack for a while. So it was like initially we tried to Dockerize OpenStack, and then there was a project called Ansible Cola containers. So they were trying to create images, and then there was company SAP. They actually created they're the first one who tried to use Helm charts to deploy OpenStack. Their approach was different from this one, is that they had like only one big chart, which is called OpenStack. So you just do Helm install OpenStack, and with one command, OpenStack up and running. In this approach, we have more commands. So you saw this. I run basically I run chart for each component of OpenStack. So this one is actually give you more granularity, and you can actually install any separate component. So if you just want a Swift cluster, you just use this component. If you want to just use Cinder, you can only deploy the Cinder. So that gives you granularity. And but when you're deploying all of those charts, if you look into the, you can see that they actually have a sequencing as well inside. And this sequencing is built in because remember, we saw the structure of the Helm. There's like requirements. There's, so let me show some examples. Yeah, so let's look into the glance, for example. So we have, so the requirements here is Helm Toolkit. So this is the only requirement you need. If you look into the SAP charts for the Helm, you will see that they have like, let's say, MariaDB as a prerequisite, but here they only have Helm Toolkit. So Helm Toolkit is a way that the way it works there, you can actually create some kind of a templating mechanism. And when we started this project, it was very difficult to start, but right now, because pretty much there's a lot of similarity in these packages. We can, the creation of the new project. Let's say if you have a Sendlin project in OpenStack, it took us like several days to build this chart. It was very easy, but in the beginning it was fairly hard. So you can see the templates here, like all of the like you have the deployment and services, but before that we use config maps and different jobs. So for example, if you deployed OpenStack, does anybody deploy OpenStack manually? Yeah. So when you deploy OpenStack, first step you would deploy MySQL database, and then you would deploy Rabbit. And every time, let's say you're creating a Keystone, what you would do first, you would create Keystone database, and you would populate Keystone database with the all of the schema for Keystone, and then you would create endpoints. And this is like this. Every project has the same structure. You have to create database, populate the schema of database, and then create endpoint, public admin, and on internal endpoints. So those steps are actually done with the jobs. So if you see job init, this will actually populate Glance database. It will start the Glance database. This will actually sync the Glance database. This will create endpoint. And every time this is happening, you can see actually you have those init containers. Like init containers in Kubernetes is something can help you to do sequencing. So for example, if you want to deploy something in a sequence, then you would create init container and say, until I get, let's say, 200 OK from the curl command, do not continue to the next step. And that's how the sequencing is done here in Helm, pretty much. So let's see I don't know, anybody started to deploying? Anybody see the database? At least MariaDB is up. You having issue?
How do we uninstall?
Yeah, so uninstall is pretty much also like Helm remove name of the chart and then -- purge. Otherwise it will yeah, I mean, pretty much you can hook up to your favorite testing mechanism. And I mean, for OpenStack community, they have kind of defined way of testing things. So we have Jenkins, Garrett, and then once things approved, it will go to the not the rally even. It's more like you do like basic testing, like functional testing, integration testing. So like every way you go, it's like different way of doing things. And like when we initially this project started in AT&T, and then they open sourced it, they donated kind of thing, so everybody can contribute. And once they moved it, they have to kind of change the way for testing as well. So things are coming up slowly. So some crashing, some initializing, but hopefully soon enough we get to the point. Yeah, so this is just I don't know if people are not aware of OpenStack. We have core services, and we have a bunch of other services that complementary to OpenStack. So Glance is doing images, Neutron networking, Swift object storage, Keystone for identity, Cinder block, and Nova Compute. And the other projects that complement OpenStack, they call Big Tent. So there's a lot of services available. And actually, if you're taking from the distribution of OpenStack, most of the companies just provide you like several of them. But with OpenStack Helm, you can get any Helm chart, and you can deploy and try it and play around. So that's pretty much the picture of just few components of OpenStack, how to talk to each other. As you can see, OpenStack is a very good example of microservices application. So that's why putting OpenStack on Kubernetes makes a lot of sense. And I would say this is right now one of the most complex applications to put. And both communities, OpenStack and Kubernetes, they work together because everybody's learning from this experience. So the thing is, I was talking about, like, every OpenStack, apart from the core services, it will has its own database and messaging queue. Yeah, and this is the project itself. So OpenStack Helm right now, it's official OpenStack project in the big tent. You can run OpenStack Helm on kubeadm, Minikube, and you can run like on any Kubernetes cluster, and you can actually, deploy in bare metal, and it will just work as a normal OpenStack. The Ceph charts that Per talked about, this is also available right now. There's still not like for production use, but I think in 1.8 Kubernetes timeframe, those going to be also used for production. Yeah, and right now we have Infrapart, Keystone, Nova, Glance, Neutron, Cinder, Horizon, and Heat. And 0.3 release that is coming. There will be Swift, Manila, Barbican, Neutron. There will be a few stuff added, and the rest charts, like, people are starting just creating on their own, adding it. So I think very soon we'll have all of the OpenStack services that you saw that will be available as a chart. And the idea of the Helm project for OpenStack was that we don't have like one big chart for OpenStack. We have like many different services. There's going to be some kind of orchestrator of Helm that will actually do upgrades. So right now the Helm OpenStack focuses only on deployment, and the second part of it is going to be doing like orchestration of upgrade. So this is something, the work just started, and there was a demo in Kubernetes community meeting last week. There's also so the plan is that Helm will manage upgrades and installation. The all OpenStack service is going to use multiple replicas and resource definitions, and you can actually, using the scheduling mechanism, you can have the pod affinity, anti-affinity stuff. The cool thing about OpenStack Helm is that right now we're using Kola Kubernetes images, but the way it works, you can actually use any containers. So for example, the guys from Canonical, they were talking about their containers. You can use with the Helm. There's like few other projects, like Stachanidis project from CoreOS. They started to do kind of deployment with containers just to show that it's possible. And they dropped this project, but we were using their containers as well. So in OpenStack Helm, we found very nice way to expose all possible configuration from OpenStack. So we're taking all parameters from the Oslo messaging, and we have like almost like 3,000 different parameters for OpenStack, and we can use it with any container. So we can pretty much expose any parameters and deploy with any type of variation and whatever you want. What else interesting? Yeah, so volume mounted configs maps for configuration through the etcd and bin. This is not probably interesting. And yeah, I think that's about it. So let's go back to our clusters. I hope it came up. Yeah, there's only a few left, Glance. But I think we can start showcasing how actually things working. One thing actually Per want to mention, but maybe forgot, the project called Monocular. This project is going to be for cataloging your charts. So it's like, for example, we just installed Minio. You can actually find this catalog in catalog app. Sorry, still alpha. So it's Mini. Yeah. So, and they kind of put all of the same thing that in the GitHub, but in a more nicer way, all information how to expose. So just bear in mind about this availability. So, for example, if you're using Helm charts for your company, you can use this catalog to provide to your end users the way to deploy application. What else? Yeah, so let's see the OpenStack on Kubernetes. So this is you see the all services and their the deployments, and like right now everything is a one replica of each service. I hope I didn't miss any. Do we have Horizon? Yeah, Horizon is here. Okay. So let's log into the Horizon dashboard. Horizon dashboard is an OpenStack kind of UI. Fingers crossed. Okay. Okay. So something didn't come up. Get pods. So glance, neutron, nova, rabbit. I'm just afraid that I missed some components when I was copy pasting. Oh, I know why. I changed the IP address. So 195. Okay, this is dashboard. Get scripts. Oh, this is, yeah, Kubernetes dashboard. Let's, yeah. So I made a small, just like, yeah, I was different place. Okay. So I didn't specify. Yeah, so basically all of the OpenStack pods, they kind of located on the namespace OpenStack. So let's check the Horizon get service. Describe Horizon, and then we need to specify. Okay, so this is the Horizon is on port 31,000. No, my laptop. Live demos. I'm just hoping to show that it actually works, because you're not gonna believe at this point. Any questions so far? I think there's only hardcore people left here. Hardcore OpenStack. Yeah, we're gonna ramp up quickly. So just want to show how it works and. Sorry. Credentials is admin password. Admin password. Yeah. So how you compare this OpenStack compared to deployed by Ansible? Well, Ansible is not deploying pods, right? Ansible is just orchestrates deployment of your, let's say, Kubernetes. I mean, you can, yeah. Hmm. I mean, it's your choice if you like to do this way. You're using Ansible to deploy. Yeah, yeah. If you like Ansible, is your choice. I mean, this is your choice. It's just imagine you're deploying like something like OpenStack. How many charts you will have? How to put them together? Ansible will not do that for you, most probably. Um, it's okay. We're back, I think. Live demos. uh, Nassim, maybe I can use the laptop now because my laptop is frozen. Yeah. Are you still there?
But everyone's leaving.
Yeah. I just want to show the end.
So I'm just gonna log into the.
It's just frozen laptop.
Here.
Okay.
Logged in. I'm logged in your VM.
You love them?
Yeah, on the VM.
Yeah.
Question.
Hmm.
Oh, your video. What the? What the heck?
As soon as you connect to it, it gets. No,
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 no.
you're there.
Okay, it's there.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, but is that this VM? Is it Nassim? Space.
your coworker. He didn't leave. He never left.
Oh.
He's just like short now. Yeah, well, that's cool. You're doing good, aren't you? People are still here.
So this is,
So this is your phone,
Yeah.
and it's working.
Well, no, it was
Okay.
his. It was mine.
Okay.
Then I gave it to him. Then he's working on it. Then his laptop broke. I logged back in.
oh my God, how many?
I never close. You never know when you'll need that tab. You know. You might go back to it.
45, 72, 187. Okay, so it's working. Okay, wait. I wanna. It actually can also spin up VMs. So let's just do this basic test and create a VM. So we're running. Oh, yeah.
Do you actually have plans? Yeah.
Test one. Okay, so Glance was not installed, right?
Yeah, you're gonna need glance.
You're missing Glance. Oh, okay. So actually, the Glance. Can you paste the Glance command? Okay.
Can you now deploy Kubernetes on top of your OpenStack?
Get a good sandwich, you know?
Yeah, that was actually. If we had more time, we could do that and use.
And then keep going, but see how far you can
Yeah.
An OpenStack. Let's see how far we can go. How many layers of OpenStack?
Well, I had
Kubernetes?
Glance actually.
Yeah, but it's
The thing is, it was crash looping earlier.
Huh?
It was crash looping.
Okay.
yeah. If you look at your status,
Do you show pods? Yeah. The group?
Remove. Remove.
you never do that.
So you're deleting the glance
Yeah.
to reinstall it.
Yeah.
Like low profile. We all have families, Archie.
Yeah, guys. I think we almost get there. So I think if somebody can finish the workshop and the part that is left actually to deploy VM, and after that you can just for fun you can scale Keystone to 10, and then you can kill any pods, and it will automatically pop up without any like HA. You're kind of you're just using Kubernetes power of scaling and replicating. I'm just thinking that because my Glance was not installed properly, because it was pasting from different sources, I think.
Why you look at me?
Yeah, so this might take some time actually.
Okay, yeah, you tell me with this fuzzy.
Yeah, I have something that's.
Pleasure. OpenStack? In general, there's actually both. The next one here.
Yeah, so the Glance is spinning up again. I think we can ramp up here. If you have any questions, the goal of this presentation again was to test drive for the next week. We're going to present in OpenStack Summit, and we'll have more information. If you want to be there, we welcome you there. We also invite to contribute to the OpenStack Helm project. So right now, the roadmap is like full of new charts to deploy for OpenStack. If you want to come and join, you're mostly welcome.